Welcome to this episode of From the Principal's Desk, a podcast for Lutheran school administrators by two Lutheran school administrators. We talk about tips, tricks, and best practices for our Lutheran schools from the lens of our leadership. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the principal at Mount Calvary Lutheran School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My co-host is Mike Sheeman.
My name is Mike Sheeman. I'm the principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio, and excited for today's topic as we take a look at communication, such a vital thing when it comes to our Lutheran schools. And I think this is probably, Rob, a topic that causes a lot of headaches, but it's also a topic that if we look at communication in our schools and work to plan ahead and really think this through, it can be something that not just blesses our schools, but causes them to grow. Something as simple as communication is one of our best marketing tools.
Yeah, and communication is really one of those things where if it's done really well, you almost don't notice it. And if it's done really poorly, it's about all you notice. So there's so many little things you could be doing or little things maybe you shouldn't be doing. And some of those things are going to be dependent on your setting and your school. So what Mike and I are saying has worked for us. That doesn't mean it'll work for you. Hopefully it does. But these are at least things you can try and ideas you can learn from.
Absolutely. And it's a sense of everything that goes out from your school, everything that you communicate reflects who you are and reflects your story. So the detail in the communication talks about how you're taking care of people and their needs. Well, that's what we want to do as Lutheran schools. Communicating the story and equipping people, not just with, hey, there's a PTA meeting next week, but also with some of the amazing things that are happening in your school is really important as well. Families have chosen your school for reasons that they have. Ultimately, whether or not their reason is Jesus, they're going to hear about him and his love. And so our communication is something that we need to really be intentional about in order to communicate that message and communicate the story, because everything links back to that pillar. So as far as ways of communicating, we can certainly talk a lot about that. But one of the things that I found a lot of success with is communicating enough so that I hear other people communicating what I want them to communicate. And then I know I've shared that story in such a way. There's a way that there's a lot of power in synergy and power in hearing people share the story that you want them to share. So communication really goes hand in hand with messaging. Those two things are tied together in a very strong way.
Yeah, there's that old adage that you can never over communicate. And that other one, that communicating is two parts. There's what you're saying and what people are hearing, but there's a third part when it comes to schools. And that's what they're telling other people, because you are equipping people with communication to go and share that vision for your school and share the story and share those great things, because people are going to be talking about your school already. And you want them to be saying the things you want them to be saying. And I think sometimes when we put out communication, we just think, okay, this is just factual. They just need to know this and this. And that might be part of it, but there's a second part to that where how is that going to motivate people to go and share awesome things about your building? And maybe it's as simple as, hey, we have picture day today. And that could just be a simple text, hey, we have picture day today. That's communication that goes out to everybody. But also you could put that in, hey, we have picture day today. What a great opportunity to look back on these memories with your kid. We really hope that you follow this, and this, so we can make it a successful event for everybody. And just that little bit kind of frames for everybody what the whole point of that is. Because if it was just factual, all our emails would be much easier to write. We could just write little bullet points and just this. We could do it like a weather report. But we know that that is not generally effective. At least it hasn't been in my experience, just trying to put things out factually like that, because you want people to get excited about the message and share that message, and that communication you want to travel through more than just your email, your text chain, or your newsletter. You want people to take that and verbalize that to other people.
That's right. And Rob, I think you correctly identified too that third level of what people are telling about your school or communicating about your school. And as an administrator, we need to be on top of that as well. And that can be a really hard one, because sometimes we feel like we might not know what people are saying, or we're hearing things through the grapevine. I found that one of the best communication tricks of the trade, so to speak, is to simply be present. We know that the parking lot can be a tricky place in some ways, because that's where parents tend to gather and talk about things. Being out there, being available, because we always tell parents, if there's concerns or if you have anything you want to know, come and talk to me. But I find that it's hard for them to come. But if I am present, it's going to be a lot easier for them to share, hey, listen, I heard this, what's going on with that, or can you clarify this detail if that's all it is. But you get a real good sense of kind of how people feel and what they're communicating. If you're present with them, you can, there's almost like a feeling that's there. If it's a tension or an excitement, either or, you'll have a good feeling for what that is. So I can't encourage administrators enough to be present as much as possible when parents are in and around your building.
Yeah, and that's really a great tip for everybody because so many things end up being little things where if they can talk to you right there if it's an issue, it's usually solved right away. Or maybe they just want to tell somebody about something great that's going on. Yesterday, at the end of the day, I was out at dismissal. I got out there a little early to talk to some parents, and one of them approached me and said, "Hey, there's a dog out here roaming around. Nobody knows who it is." And sure enough, there's a brown pit bull just kind of roaming. And had I not been out there and had a parent not feel comfortable enough to talk to me, I just would have dismissed kids outside with a loose dog outside. So the parents definitely have your back on a lot of that, but being visible helps. Now they could have called the office, but nobody did. Nobody thought about it. But when they saw me, they went, "Oh, I should probably let him know." And that open line of communication is so helpful. Now, with communication with parents, that's something that sometimes we dread but sometimes we look forward to. But for the most part, as principals, we have that down. The media is a whole other story. If something happens at your school and a news crew shows up, how do you handle that? And a lot of the time, the worst thing you can say is no comment because they're going to take that and they're going to run with that, and they'll still show the picture of your building, and they'll still run the story, and they'll just say the school had no comment. So interfacing with media is another important part of this, and that's not just for bad things, that's for good things. The news media in your local community is always looking for things to run. They are always looking for stories. That's the thing about the news. They always need new things. And a lot of the time they have a tip line. You can just call and say, "Hey, we're having this event today." Or, "Hey, we are having this great dinner and we just wanted to let you guys know." And maybe they don't show up, or maybe they do. When I was a previous call, the kids had a book fair. We raised enough money, and their goal is that I was going to sleep on the roof if they raised enough money. And so they did. And so what did we do? We called the newspaper, we called the TV station. We said, "Hey, this day the principal is going to sleep on the roof. If you want to come out." They sent out a photographer, they sent out a news crew. I got interviewed on the top of our school. A family brought me a pizza and we like pulled it up onto the roof with a pulley system. And that got our community, our school community, out into the larger community because people go, "Oh, where's that place? That sounds awesome. I love that those things are going on there." And whenever you're in front of media, do not miss the opportunity to point back to your mission, to point back to, we are doing things for Christ. That's why we're doing this. And maybe they won't run it, but you can at least make sure that it's out there. And actually, I was fortunate enough that made it on the air. I snuck it right in the middle of the interview where they couldn't cut it. And that made it out to everybody. And that was so awesome.
Absolutely. That's a great point because we do a lot of things as a school that really build our community. And I think that's unique. That's not seen as a normal thing. When you have other school systems, and okay, I'll just say it, maybe in the public school, that's not part of their goal or part of what they're trying to accomplish. As a Lutheran school, we're very relational and we want to do certain things that build a community of faith, a community of people and believers in this area. So as we do those things, it is special, it is unique. I know there was one school it was a neighboring school from where I served out in Oregon, and most of the schools in Oregon were taking November 11th off as Veterans Day, and this school did the opposite. They not only did they have school on Veterans Day, but they brought in tons of vets, and they served a breakfast, and they had a color guard, and they did all of these amazing things to honor and serve those who served our country. And the media was all over that, and they got great media coverage, and you couldn't be anywhere around the city and not know what that particular Lutheran school had done. So I think if you're thinking about, is this worthy of calling the media about or not? If you have to ask the question, the answer is yes. Give them a call, because the worst thing that's going to happen is they don't show up. But any of that positive view, positive messaging we can get out there is absolutely critical.
Yeah,
I'm Go ahead.
we are always looking to grow the kingdom and to win people for Christ and to bring people into our school. And so much of that is just getting your story out there and differentiating for people who aren't familiar with your community what makes you special, what makes you different than the other schools in your community, whether those are other private schools or public schools. And so often, if we don't get out and share that, people will make up their mind about your school, but that might be totally wrong. where I used to teach in Kansas City, Missouri, small Lutheran school. And in my master's program, all the people in my master's program were from the public school. They were literally 4 blocks down the road from us, some of them. And they're, oh, that's like that really rich kid school that nobody can afford to go to. And I'm like, no, not at all. That is the message they had heard. That's the message they had built up in their head because we weren't doing a good job of communicating what we actually were.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that we can not only not communicate what you are, but I think it's easy for us to see why our schools are so good because God is here, but also some of the struggles that other schools around us might have. And I know where I was serving in my first school as principal, we had a public system that was terrible. So many things were going wrong. They were pulling events from what they would typically do. Teachers were on the cusp of a strike. And I was trying to think, how do you market or communicate to our community that, hey, we're doing great and we would love to have you at our school. So while you're losing all this stuff, we're doing all of this stuff. And we actually went ahead and we did some marketing where for us, it was simply take a look at all of the things that are happening at this Lutheran school. And coming up, we have this event, PTA, we have daddy daughter dance, we've got Christmas event coming up, and all of these things. And even some basic things that you would expect from schools. Our report cards go out on such and such a date. And we would have very logistical things so the families knew what it is that we were doing. So it was not putting another system down, but it was simply stating, this is who we are and what we do. We communicated that to parents. They communicated it to their circles. And actually, we had some enrollment spikes because of it, which was kind of fun to navigate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And sometimes it's as simple as taking the list of your honor roll kids and sending that to the newspaper. I mean, like, hey, these kids are on honor roll this quarter. And people see that and people get recognized with that. And parents will cut those out and they will save them in their scrapbook. And that just is such an awesome way to highlight the things you're doing in ways that sometimes we take for granted. Like what I had a parent approach me and ask me if we would do that. And I don't even read a newspaper. So I was like, why would you do that? But it doesn't hurt to ask, right? So we sent it out there and it made it in and people loved it. So we kept doing it. And be open when people tell you that you're not communicating in a way that they think you should. Take that in and decide whether that's valid or not. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I had one person ask for a personal text message every morning, and I'm like, well, there is a newsletter. So while I appreciate that you want to be on top of things, I'm just going to ask you to read the newsletter. But thanks, like I'll take that under advisement. But some of that is really helpful because you only have your ideas. And if somebody says, hey, I have this idea and that's totally new to you, don't dismiss it out of hand right away.
Yeah, somebody once asked me, what's the best way to communicate? And I think the best way to communicate is in the way that your people will receive communication. It's I know kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer maybe, but there are so many ways to communicate between email and texting and phone calls and face-to-face, social media. There's all these things, but at the end of the day, you need to know your context to understand how it is that people are going to receive that communication. We have multiple means of communication set up here. The other piece that we've set is this is how I'm going to use each method of communication and when I'm going to use them. So here at Bethany, we have a lot of different tools that we use, but the families know that if you're looking for kind of the big picture of things, the school weekly, even 2 weekly calendar, you're going to go to our newsletter for that. If there's going to be a school closure or something, maybe there's incident around our school where the roads are closed, we have a texting system that's set up through remind.com. If any of you don't know about Remind, you should look it up. It's a free way that you can set up groups to text your whole school. And we shoot out a text, but the parents know if they get a text from that group, it's because it's something that I urgently need them to see right away. They also know too, if they want the stories and they want to see some of the things, pictures from the day, they can go onto our school's Facebook page. And social media opens up a whole other realm, but we typically know the big three being Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I've actually have yet to serve at a school that actively uses Twitter, and it's because the parents who are in our school are not really Twitter people. And that's just been my culture. If maybe you're at a school where they don't use Instagram for whatever reason, or who knows what, but knowing what platforms are used by your people are not only going to share your story, but help them to share it as well into their networks.
Yeah, and you don't need to keep up with all the social media. There seems to be a new one all the time, and you don't need to be chasing those and finding those. But if you notice that the majority of your parents are on one of them, it wouldn't be a bad idea to look at, okay, should we be posting? So for us, it's Instagram and Facebook, and since they're owned by the same company, you can actually post to both of them at the same time, which sometimes can be a little busy trying to find ways to do that. But realize that's not something the principal has to take on their own. You have other people you can empower in your building. You can get a group page that multiple people can manage, and you can give people the freedom to post things after a little bit of training. And okay, here are our guidelines. That's all good, but then don't think that you are the only communicator in your building, because you're not. You are not the only communicator in your building. There are hundreds of other people in your building who are also communicators in your building, and your job is not to be the chief communicator, but to be the I guess the chief encouragement and messaging officer, and get that out to people and get them excited, and then give them things they can tell everybody, because they're going to share that message much more effectively than you ever could.
Rob, just a practical question. What tool do you use to post to both Instagram and Facebook at the same time?
So we use one called Class Intercom. That does have a cost to it, but that allows us to schedule things. It allows us to moderate things. The teachers all have access, so they can actually post there, and then I'll get a little notification, hey, they want to post, and I can approve their post. I can give notes on it, hey, this needs to be changed, or this picture's kind of blurry, or I changed the wording a little bit, and that gives us some granular control over that. But even with the Facebook, if you have a Facebook group page or business page, I can't remember what the exact wording on that is, you can actually tie that to an Instagram account, and then you can cross post that way too.
Yeah. Yeah, the other one that I'm somewhat familiar with is called Hootsuite, and that's another tool that you can use. I'm sure there's lots out there, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe just a couple practical ideas gets people doing Google searches and figuring some of that stuff
There you go.
out.
I should have bought
Um,
stock. That's what I should have done. I should have bought
there
stock
you
in
go.
Class Intercom first.
Right? Not too late. Um, so the other thing too, as you communicate, social media tends to be really good for those feel good stories that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
We tend not to post any kind of details on social media about, hey, don't forget that tomorrow's a hot lunch day or whatever, because by the time people see that, it can easily be confused if it doesn't show up in their feed till 3 days later, and they think it's the
Mhm.
day after when it's already happened. So being aware of that. But the one thing I found parents are really keen on, and we need to be keen on, is how we post pictures of their kids on those platforms. We've had to be really careful to make sure we're not tagging names, of course, of kids, but sometimes it's interesting. You'll take a picture and you realize, hey, I'm in the first grade room and I took a picture of the kid at their desk, and it's a cute little picture, but their first and last name are on the name tag on the desk. So an awareness of those types of things as you communicate your story on social media, still want to make sure that you're protecting the kids. We have a Lutheran Junior Honor Association here, and we were just in the process of buying them all our official magnetic name tags, making it really, really friendly for them. And we did our first run, and we had first and last name on the name tag, but we had to rethink that, realizing, no, this is going to be on our social media, and so we don't want to do that. So those types of things are concerns that you have to be aware of when you are communicating through social media. It's still protection of the students is number one.
Yeah, so make sure you have a photo release out there. Make sure you have a plan to deal with if something falls through the cracks on that. Uh, Maybe that means you just scrap a post and then you have to call a parent and apologize. That does happen occasionally. I've also seen places where if a kid's not in a photo release and they're in a group picture, they just, Photoshop a little smiley face over that kid, and that way you can still use that photo, and, no one knows who that kid is. So I've seen that done other ways. But the point of it is that just because they go to your building doesn't mean you get to share them with everyone else outside of your building. That is a parental right. They get to decide what they want their kid to be in, and it's up to you to make sure you respect that.
We could easily double the length of this particular podcast. We've been talking a lot about communicating our story to our parents and equipping them to be communicators. But some of that also starts with internal communication and how you communicate with staff. And not only the details, but inviting the staff to be collaborators with you so that they are in certain things from the ground level up, makes it easier for them to communicate. But Rob, how do you communicate best with your staff? What's a tool or a trick that you've used?
I write a Sunday night email and I let all of them know it's going to go out on Sunday night. You don't need to read it on Sunday night. Make sure you read it by Monday morning. And I keep it short, literally bullet points. Hey, these are the things this week. This person has devotions. This person has detention duty. We have this field trip this day. This, if we have, a fire drill, hey, it's coming up this week. Those really basic bullet point things. And then we meet every morning for devotions and we talk about all of those things again. And I give the reminder, hey, here are the things you need to know today. We also have a group text. Hey, these are the things you need to know if something comes up in the middle of the day, and then email. So we have a lot of modalities that we use to try and get all of that out to teachers.
Mhm. I can say ditto. Actually, all of those practices, that's exactly what we're doing here too. But I think too, just like me personally, I appreciate reminders of certain things. So even though the email went out, we use devotions for that as well. We do the devotions and usually have about 5 minutes of, hey, don't forget X, Y, and
Mm-hmm.
Z. Um, but I know the teachers too like to have communication done efficiently. And so even staff meeting can be a really good time to review some of that communication or share it. But also staff meeting time in general is precious. So I keep telling the staff too that there were things in this week's email, make sure you read it so that I don't have to waste time telling them things that were emailed out or should be emailed out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of structure of staff meetings we can talk about another time. But I think both that internal communication is as vital as the external communication. And again, all of it wraps up to share the story of who you are and why you do what you do.
Yeah, and as Mike said, we could go on for days and days and days about communication and still not cover most of it. But I think this is probably a good place to stop. I think we have plenty of things out there that people can chew on.
Absolutely. And pray that as you communicate, that it's a blessing to you, that knowing God will take whatever it is that you're working as your eyes are fixed on Jesus, and he will turn it into, it will accomplish what he needs it to accomplish. So keep being faithful to it, keep thinking about it. It's important to be intentional about communication and to share those stories of your school and God's blessings as you continue to serve him.
Blessings on your week.